I want to tell you about something interesting. I call this next segment the Democrat Convention is the Marxist Revolution. But I really want to tell you about something first, and then I'll tell you why I say this. So over this past weekend, a longtime friend of my husband and mine, who is a very well-known figure in national security in Washington, D.C., was here, and here visiting, and we had a long meeting with him. And one thing that came out of this meeting I want to share with you, and I really want to urge you to think about this, is too many Americans think of 2020 as just the next election cycle. And, you know, we have a candidate for the Republican Party, we have a candidate for the Democrat Party, sometimes we have Green Party, sometimes we have Libertarian Party, who knows, all sorts. And, you know, we have people, are kind of flash in the pan, say they're going to run, and they discover no one's interested in their candidacy. But we always have two candidates in the major parties, and everyone in the country expects one of those two people will win. And everyone in the country expects, pretty much, that America is going to continue being America no matter which of those two candidates wins. But what came out of this conversation, and this is really, it wasn't exactly news because it was many pieces and stories and arguments I've made to you in the show many times, but it really coalesced in my thinking. We in this country, we are not just watching Antifa tear up cities. We're not just watching the Marxist Black Lives Matter movement destroy property and cars and cities and claim areas as their own. We are not just watching radicals uprising similar to the 1960s when we had a lot of anti-war protests. We are watching the actual beginning of the Marxist revolution in this country. It's not just politics. It's not just reaction to the horrific killing that occurred in the hands of the Minneapolis police of George Floyd. Has nothing to do with George Floyd. We are watching the Marxist revolution right in front of us. This election is about accepting or rejecting the Marxist revolution in this country. That's the central issue of the 2020 elections. You can say it's border security, you can say it's immigration policy, you can say it's all sorts of wealth redistribution, but the central issue in 2020 is America going to insist and retain the idea of America or surrender to the Marxist revolution that is right in front of our faces. It's right in front of us. And you hear people all the time, we've had them on this show, we'll have them again, who grew up in Cuba or who grew up in Venezuela and have talked about the idea that when the revolution came along, when the Marxist takeover happened, they didn't see it for what it was. They didn't know what it was. They didn't see, oh, this guy Castro, he's probably, going to end up depriving us of all of our rights and freedoms. They saw a guy who promised them a lot of great things, and he sounded like he loved the people, and he was there with the real people, and so they brought him to power. Same thing in Venezuela with Chavez. He didn't get elected by announcing, I'm engaging in the Marxist takeover of this country. He got elected by pointing out alleged inadequacies, unfairnesses, promises to make things fair, promise to make things right, all exactly the same as what the Democrat Party is promising America today. That's what is happening in America. We are America pre-Castro, America pre-Chavez. Now you might say, yeah, but this is America. We have the Democrat Party. They've been around forever. They're not going to take us down the road of Chavez or of Castro. But yes, they are. Yes, they are. And that's what I want to hit. Today, the Democrat convention starts in Milwaukee, such as it is. It's, remote, and everyone's going to be sitting home in front of their computers and, blathering away. That's what the convention is. But I want to just tell you a few things. I'm going to lay out a lot of this over the next several weeks. But you have to understand the policies the Democrat Party is putting forward, the arguments they are making are exactly the same as what Chavez said in Venezuela, as what Castro said in Cuba. Exactly the same arguments. We're watching the Marxist revolution, and we have for our friends, some of us have our friends on the left in this country who really aren't radical Marxists, they're not radical socialists, but they have been lured in, they have been duped, they've been lied to by the press in this country, by the media in this country, to believe the lies of the left, so that they think the only way to solve all the violence in the cities, the only way to solve these problems, the only way is to get rid of Trump, and then we'll have peace. And it's exactly the opposite. If you vote Democrat this time, if you vote for Biden, Harris, or whoever is going to eventually run the country, because it's not going to be Biden, if you vote for them, you're voting for Chavez, you're voting for Castro. Understand that. The policies they will bring are exactly like that. Now I want to tell you quick little fact points about Biden. We had on the show months ago Trevor Loudon. He is a great thinker and writer. He happens to be Australian by background. His book is called White House Reds. Reds as in communists, White House Reds. Brilliant book written while we still had 16 Democrat candidates for president, and he wrote basically about each of them and their connection to radical communism. About Biden, the one who runs as a moderate, the ones who all the Democrats in the country say, well, I was okay with Biden. I didn't like the other crazies running for president on the Democrat side, but Biden, he's kind of mainstream. Let me just tell you a few things to remember about Joe Biden. Did you realize when he first ran for United States Senate from the state of Delaware, listen to what I'm saying, when he first began running, the only office he ever held was something like city council. He had never been a Delaware state rep, a Delaware state senator. He had no, even statewide in that tiny little state, he had no statewide identity. And he ran against an incumbent Republican, a Republican who had been there for a long time, who had at that time he ran an 81% favorable rating. The Republican holding the Senate seat that Biden went for back in 1972 had an 81% approval rating. Nixon had won the state by 65% of the vote. And Biden, no political identity, no political resume to sell, took out a popular 81% approval rate Republican and pulled off a victory to get a seat in the United States Senate by 3,162 votes. How did he do that? And he's been there ever since. He's been in Washington ever since. A do-nothing guy, a no-accomplishment guy in the Senate all that time. And I'm going to tell you how he did that. Again, read Trevor Loudon's book, but I wanted to share this with you. When I say that this Democrat convention is the Marxist convention, understand, these are the Russia supporters. So you had Biden running for Senate, but he got the support of the backing of the surreptitious, hidden backing of the Council for a Livable World. Well, that sounds pretty nice. Who doesn't want a livable world? Council for a Livable World. What is that group? It is a Russian-funded group in Washington with the singular mission of disarming America. Russian-led group, funding, orchestrating, and it wasn't just this campaign. This organization, one of their tactics was to get their way in these elections. One of their tactics was to identify small states, small races where they could get someone they could completely control, get someone in office they could buy their way into the election, give that person backing, they could completely control them, and then when they had them in, they had them under their thumb. This is who Joe Biden is. This is how he got elected. Interestingly, Al Gore Sr., the father of the Al Gore, the lunatic climate change guy, but Al Gore Sr. was affiliated with Council for a Livable World. He was so impressed with Biden that he had that group send out an email to their followers and say, hey, this guy Biden looks pretty good. We ought to get behind him. He's looking pretty good. So that group managed to collect basically 1/3 of all the money that Biden raised in this race. So 1/3 of the money Biden raised to win a Senate seat after having no previous seat at all came from Al Gore Sr. and the Council for a Livable World. Throughout Biden's time in the United States Senate, he was consistently arguing against the growth and protection and development of America's nuclear program. He was consistently protective of Russia, consistently fighting against the efforts America had to rein in Russia's nuclear program. He has made good on his promise, and it's not just back when he ran in 1972, because that was a long time ago. And so I'll just tell you that even as recent as 2010, the year 2010, Biden said in a speech in Nashville, Tennessee, about the Council for a Livable World. He's describing what happened when he goes there to be interviewed. He gets a call from Al Gore Sr. saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you, young man." He goes, "So I showed up in Senator Gore's apartment in the Methodist House, catty-cornered the Supreme Court. I sat there. It was an interview. I didn't realize it. Senator Gore, who had left the Senate 2 years earlier, said, 'I'm going to help you.'" So if you want to blame anybody for by being a U.S. Senator elected 7 times and a vice president, it's all the fault of former Senator Gore. Very important other fact is this organization that they're part of, Council for a Livable World. Again, they come up with great names. Council for a Livable World was funded in part by a very rich man, Armand Hammer. Armand Air, M-A-N-D Hammer. Armand Hammer, a longtime head of Occidental Petroleum. And Armand Hammer was one of the most famous Soviet operatives in American history. So Al Gore raising money for Biden in an organization funded and run by Armand Hammer, a Soviet operative in the United States of America. Armand Hammer, was a son of the Communist Party USA founder, Julius Hammer. He made millions trading with the newly founded Soviet Union. I mean, I'm getting at the point, just because Joe Biden smiles and looks presidential if he never opens his mouth, you have to understand his roots, his loyalty, his money come from radical leftist sources, always determined, always committed to disarming America and supporting Russia. And the other half of his ticket, you have, as everyone now knows by now, Joe Biden has chosen Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris. We'll be talking a lot more about her. But when I say that the Democrat convention is the Marxist revolution in this country, you have to understand the policies the Democrats are now embracing. There's no breathing room between the Democrats' policies and those of the Marxist leftists in this country. The Democrats are the Marxists. We're watching a Marxist revolution right in front of our faces. Kamala Harris, I'll just say one thing today about her, get back to more about her. She's a huge supporter of the Green New Deal. If you watch a show a long time and you've heard my interviews with experts about the Green New Deal, if you think the Green New Deal is about protecting clean air and clean water, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's important to know this. The Green New Deal is a Marxist effort to take over America. That's what the Green New Deal is. It is completely obliterating our ability to rely on reliable fossil fuels. It demands irrational deadlines of getting rid of all fossil fuels and the growth and production of fuels like solar power and wind power, which if you actually, we've had an expert on this show do it, break down the Green New Deal and say, what is it going to take to get there? You'd have to cover the entire continental U.S. with windmills and solar panels to get to the level of energy production they are saying they can have happen to replace what we're doing with fossil fuels and fracking. So Green New Deal, radical, and first of all, and the environmental stuff is just a piece of the Green New Deal. Green New Deal has housing mandates where we're all going to end up having to live in houses that can't stay warm in the winter and can't stay cool in the summer and are more closely congregated, because you know how leftists want everyone to live in the same place and be under their control. The Green New Deal guarantees jobs to people, nothing to do with the environment. It's the Marxist takeover of America. It's the Marxist agenda and disguised as an environmental bill. This is where Kamala Harris is, one of her huge efforts. We'll talk more about her, but you have to understand she is being built up as this, wow, she's a very experienced, she's been a prosecutor, she has a lovely appearance, she is able to speak articulately, she's well educated. A lot of things to say about her background, but at the end of the day, what I care the most about is understanding it'll be nearly impossible to get America back if you let these people win this election of 2020. Our job, the job of patriots, is to spread the word, spread the information about how truly radically Marxist left the Democrat Party has become. Kamala Harris is. The idea that Vice President Biden, now presidential candidate Biden, has been funded by Russia for decades, an organization committed to making sure America is disarmed so we can't defend ourselves. That's who funds this guy and has funded him continually. He gives remarks at speeches thanking them for the great job they did of getting him elected and continue to support him, and he has done their bidding. I got to try to hit two other quick topics today. I got a little bit late start today, so I can't do all the time I want to in that. But I want you to understand the Democrat convention unfolding right now. The political race we're looking at in the fall is either keep America and keep freedom, or go Marxist and surrender your liberty. That is where we are. The two people who happen to win the nomination, who are going to be on the ballot apparently in November on the Democrat side, they may look like they are thoughtful, they're intelligent, they have good ideas. These are Marxists who are going to do the same things to America, to try to do the same things to America as Chavez did to Venezuela and Castro did to Cuba. We have to rise up and reject it.